he's admitted that himself, right? You know, it's hearsay, I suppose, but Felicity told me that she had admitted that it's 80% placebo, what he does. He would talk about things like he knows how to control demons. I believe what he really means is that he knows how to control people like Felicity, because he has a lot of control of her. He has maintained a paternalistic control of her life, based in particular on in a period of incredible violence to which he subjected her without apology and without remorse, and blamed her for it, which is exactly what predators do. Just exactly what Felicity did to me. Right? Blame the victim. Blame the victim. Right? The alcoholic script is there's something wrong with you, but really there's something wrong with my behavior. Okay. I could give you a list of things that Felicity has said to me in the course of attempting to sexually harass me and sexually harassing me and after sexually harassing me, including that using the word you, addressing me. You're scared of women was one of them. You need to be more flexible. Um, and you project things onto people and then attack them. So basically accusing me of being a delusional psychotic like her. So I find that one the most inscrutable. And that came near the end of my association with her. Or that I had problems with my father or something one day because she was flustered because she didn't leave the house on time. You know, and immediately descended into saying it was because of me and because I had problems with my father. So you can kind of see how this person kind of thinks, how easily they project onto other people. And it's very important to remember is how easy a psychopath can learn and groom someone as an object for projection. It really comes into play when you look at a cult and you plant, if accidentally, information in the cult, and you see how that information is distributed. So, for instance, one point, and I'm speaking sporadically here, moving around, I complained to Felicity of being sexually harassed in front of witnesses at the school. Outside the door to one of her Qigong schools, I was sexually harassed by a female named Rosalie, this extremely angry older woman, and just a sick woman. And how I predicted that this would happen, but I knew that Felicity wouldn't be interested in that, and so I really didn't mention it to her. I mean, I've been assaulted by a lot of women in my life. Old women tend, like Felicity, tend to get fond of me. They tend to see me as a nice guy. I used the word James, was my middle name at the time, and thought she had an appreciably or sufficiently appreciable idea of me as an intelligent, earnest, perhaps troubled or had a traumatic history. I imagine most people that she's known or knows has a traumatic history. In fact, most people do. And it's interesting the types of ways that she would address me based on one thing or the other. And, medical Qigong, which is useless, it's just visualization. All these useless things, but that someone could occupy themselves with instead of really dealing with reality. Okay? And so there's lots of different kinds of psychopaths. Every kind of psychopath you meet is kind of different, and they're not just a psychopath. It is a disease. So Felicity has a disease, and it's a disease that the world has. It's a disease that we all kind of have to deal with, and it incarnates in people and situations, strangely enough, where people are often trying to do good for humanity. And they're trying to serve their God, and they're trying to follow unconditional love and all of those things. Okay? And this has been studied. This is research, that's been done. And a cult can really be defined as a combination of wanting to do something really good, and that the provenance of one's allegiance to the cult, to the cult leader, lends what are called like corrupting influences, right? And then the people that are victimized by that, anything they say challenges, obviously the integrity of the cult, because people are usually very identified with the cult and with the leader of the cult, and it's kind of like this, you got your leader, your pure focal point at the top of the pyramid, And anything that threatens that is a challenge to the immune system of the entire school. The idea that there can be things like sexual harassment, or you just might have a student who has mental imbalances and attacks people, you know, is not something that a lot of people are prepared for, and it's not something that Jingwei is obviously prepared for. But you would think if you're dealing with levels of health, stimulating longevity, or the physical energy, the sex energy, which they're not putting in the website, you'll notice, but Dr. Zhang and the school and Felicity are very clear that they're developing the sex energy, the root energy, the physical energy of the body, that is really the powerhouse of how their trickery, how their Qigong trickery is supposed to work. In other words, achieving noticeable changes in the physiological response to various kinds of stimulation with no evidence that it really means anything more than increasing the tonality or um, resistant capacity to, say, physical stimulation of various parts of the body, the back, the head, the hands, the legs, the stomach. So the legs would be the golden pillars, the hands would be the golden brushes, and there's the golden bell of the chest, the golden shield, and the golden crown or something, probably, and golden head. He'll be all right. So I'm moving around, and I'm very, very familiar generally with the overall workings of the school, or at least its philosophy, and how it came to be where it is today, and how dedicated and how identified with it Felicity is, and that I'm going to just say, shut up. Shut up. Take a shit on the carpet if you have to. I'm not taking you anywhere. We were outside and you were crying. Okay? You can crap in here if you want to. I don't mind. We've got carpets for that. Or even better. Hold on. Okay, come here. Come here. We'll do something even better. Here, come here. I'm going to take you out. It's amazing that the one day you get up to make a video, the dog just loses his shit. It's just, I think in a way he can tell what I'm talking about. He can tell that it's evil. If I was just sleeping in bed right now, he'd probably be sleeping too. He can tell that my mind is very alert and very active, and he's like, well, why aren't we doing something? I just got my YouTube channel back from, it's funny, the 4 or 5 strikes I've had over the last several months, based on what YouTube calls the violation of its hate speech policy. So that's how I know that I'm doing something right. If you're checking this out, check out my YouTube channel. You kind of see what I talk about, and I'll probably be touching on a few things today. It's a beautiful stone. I don't really care. Let's just be clear, emotionally, mentally. I don't care about Felicity Kelly. I don't care about rapists like Rudy Seegers, sexual abusers like Rudy Hexter, who was also in the school for a while, a Canadian instructor. Um, um, Sexually abusive men like Brett Holland, who are, disgusting human beings. Felicity Kelly, and a number of other students and instructors which I encountered. I believe that there's probably no one in that school who doesn't have a history of sexual abuse in their families. In that the kinds of people who generally end up dedicating their lives to some religion often have sexual abuse. I would say always. I know people would have trouble with that, but I would say always, because I'm aware of just how wide a range of sexual abuse there is in the world. My own mother was raped when she was a child. 2 of her sisters were raped. every woman I've ever known has been diddled or raped, usually by a family member of some kind. And I don't doubt the same is the case in Felicity. Case, and there really should, in the great cosmic scheme of it all, be a better solution than Jingwei Qigong and then raping other people. Dr. Zhang, she told me, enticed her into raping me, encouraged her to do so, essentially, because he's an expert on sex energy and knew that she needed to have sex with me. And after she raped me, and before the next rape, she would tell me how older women, older yin, is really good for younger yang. And she was an expert on sex as well, I guess. Giving a justification for why, it was good for us to have sex contact, right? This set up one of the final, but not the final, final physical levels of sexual assault when she came into my bedroom one night, got under the blankets and started putting my penis in her mouth until it became erect, and kept sucking it until I ejaculated into her mouth, and then she drank the semen. And then she got out and went to her bed and went to sleep. And then she went on one of her regular trips to Austin or Arizona, and called me one day and told me that she thought, quote, I had sexual problems. And like the other statements, like you project onto people and attack them, or you're scared of women, I'll tell you the story about when that happened. There's no justification. When she sat down one day after being sexually harassed for the nth time and said, oh, you project things on people and then attack them, she didn't tell me what she was talking about. She didn't tell me who she was talking about. She didn't qualify it scientifically or anecdotally in any way. She just expected me to accept this on face value. I didn't respond because at the time, everything had become so violent. I was basically doing my own practice privately to basically ground the anger involved, because someone like her will put poison and violence into your body. If this person only knew, right? They carry violence around in their body. It's stored in them, and they can spread it to their victim. Part of what that's called is gaslighting, scapegoating, but basically sexual predators gaslight and scapegoat their prey so that, they're going to get away with things. Jingwei, another point that needs to be drawn from this and explains why it's important, is that Jingwei Qigong and anything Felicity or Dr. Zhang are involved with, or his so-called children and so forth, is dangerous to people. And when something's dangerous and I see something's dangerous, I have an obligation to tell the public, right? I've been a student. I've lived with this woman as a roommate. That's what I was supposed to be. I, in fact, specifically told her I did not want any sexual contact, any more sexual contact, after she sexually assaulted me the first time in my home, okay? Under false pretenses. The day after this sexual contact, she accused me of raping a couple teenagers whom I knew, and then was surprised that I did not, in fact, wish to pursue a relationship with her, and how disappointing that was to her, okay? And now I have to admit to a certain incredible stupidity here, as a man who has grown up unqualifiably being sexually harassed by women my entire life, that I really thought things were done. I really believed already in kind of what she did and who she is and what she was doing. So I thought, people are creepy in that area. We'll just leave that alone. She can go masturbate or find someone else to fuck or whatever she needs to do. And I moved in with her as a roommate. Before I'd moved in, she called me one day, and there's a woman named Kirsty, which she knew, who was a girlfriend of a man who was actually a friend of mine, and lived in a home of a friend of mine. Felicity didn't know that, and lived in one of my good female friends on the island, whom Felicity never met, and I would never have introduced her to, because Felicity is a sick human being. And this woman, whose name I will not say, would have no doubt been aware of that upon first meeting her. And Kirsty was, and is, or is, if she's still alive, a sexually promiscuous, very fiery, sexually oriented person. This is someone who would have sex with strangers, kind of thing. And she would have very loud sex with this man, whom she married, and in conspiracy with other female associates of this poor man who had recently come to the island, eventually killed him. Basically killed him. People like Kirsty or Felicity, they don't really like men. They might like having sex with them, but they don't like them. Same thing with male psychopaths. they may like doing things with women, like women may do things, but they don't really connect emotionally to other people very well, right? It's all about the excitement. It's all about, you know, if Felicity didn't have Qigong, if that wasn't our life living in that apartment every day, and she wasn't involved in these cults, she would have had nothing to talk about. She's never written anything. She's never really created anything in her entire life. You know, not you know that she's never really put her spirit into anything except cults. So she's basically been giving herself away to these cult leaders her entire life, and has never really done anything of her own. It's important to understand that children who don't have a lot of self-esteem when they're young and don't have that support they need, don't have, a vibrant, supportive environment, and have parents who are drug addicts like Felicity did, and who are abusive people, have a very strong desire to identify with something that has purpose, that gives them a sense of meaning in the world, and then, take something that's destructive and then does something positive with it. This is reflected, in fact, into the stories of some of her gurus, who, like Amachi, who's a confidence trickster, of a very extraordinary nature, by the way. So people like Dr. Zhang and people like Ama or Cielo, these are sophisticated, healthy, psychopathic pranksters. They are needed in society. They have a place. There's a place for Dr. Zhang. They're upper echelon parasites. And there are parasites among the human race. And Dr. Zhang is a parasite. Alma is a parasite. And Felicity has become a parasite. The teachers of Jingwei are parasites. The students are learning to become parasites, essentially. Any decent person that comes into that school usually leaves or maybe finishes one level and goes. The really sick people stick around. Remember, there's no proof that Oriental medicine or acupuncture does anything. You can interpret various results or effects, but there's nothing scientific about that. Okay? I can jump up and down and wave my penis in the air and say that I'm feeling better. And again, acupuncture is an invasive therapy. Nobody should be putting needles into anybody. It's useless. This idea that you'll see these pictures of elaborate Chinese, Oriental, look at the meridians and the ley lines of the body and how fucking complicated it must be. You have to be well trained to do it the right. The needle has to be in the right angle at the right time with the right rapport and the right energy. If you got that qigong energy going on, and move energy. Felicity herself had a very poignant, life-changing event getting acupuncture from Matt LeBlanc. What is his name? Matt something on there? That fucking Matt guy with the mangy beard. Looks like a fucking homeless guy, And I met the guy. He's a jovial, as pleasant a person as you've met. The thing is, I knew a guy just like him when I was young, and he beat the living shit out of me, right? And then he walked away like he was like just going to go serve Jesus the rest of his life. These people have a lot of violence in their bodies. I have a lot of violence, you might notice. I have a lot of anger, but I'm in contact with it, you see. I can process it and work with it. I'm not trying not to have bad thoughts, right? And that's what these people are like. They really never have bad thoughts. They would look at someone like me and say, oh, you're so negative, and why are you so negative? Even thinking curses like, you're going to give yourself a heart attack, or your life is just, you're just negative, you need Alma and unconditional love. It's like, yeah, I need Felicity's unconditional love like I need Matt's cock up my ass, which is not a whip. But she had a somewhat, like you would call it, a healing crisis getting acupuncture from Matt the first time. Right, and it's more of a magical effect than it is anything else, and something around her shoulder, and she had a globule of, say, grief come out of her body, and she cried torrentially, and it was about her mother, and her mother had kind of put too much on her, and she was still holding this guilt inside her body, and then boom, she was relieved, and her rotator cuff issue started to disappear, or so-called, and what happens is that really these pains just move somewhere else. You don't relieve a lifetime of grief from an alcoholic mother by crying for 5 minutes on the acupuncture table. You're interpreting a certain result. If something makes you cry, I used to go into Scientology when I was 19 years old, and I would sit in a chair with an e-meter. Actually, they weren't using e-meters. And a woman would come in, beautiful ass, would get off her bike, and she would come in. They gave me, of course, a beautiful girl to audit me. And I had read everything on Scientology. I'm a very smart man, and that doesn't mean smart people don't get into cults. Why? Because the same reason that anyone gets into a cult. I wanted to improve the world, and I wanted to feel better about myself, and literally nothing else was achieving that intellectual and personal satisfaction. And then people choose these crazy cults. But you know, the therapy that I got in that Scientology clinic in that period of a month or two was better than any therapy I've ever had. You know why? Because they listened to me, and mostly I would cry and have lucid flashbacks to past lives, which was really interesting. So it was really, I was generating my own therapy essentially. But I remember going into there the first few times, and I would just cry. I could have interpreted a very positive result and say, wow, Scientology brought out all my grief about being a child of alcoholics, which I am, by the way. And I've written a book on alcoholism. I've written several books on it. I study it for a living. I study cult psychology. Alcohol, you know, is a very amorphous but very important part of violence in the world. Whether it's physically present or not, you can always smell alcohol when human beings are acting badly. And the similarity between the types of traits of someone behaving in a violent manner and alcohol are obvious. It's lowered inhibitions. The same thing you get from cults with unconditional love. The word love is bandied about a lot. It can mean anything you want it to mean. You go into a place in a white room full of a woman in a white scarf or something saying, this is a simple practice of physical stimulation, applying some herb and meditation, and everyone here can improve a little bit every day, and that's the process of Jing Gui Qigong, you know? Boom, boom, boom. No one's hurting you. No one's yelling at you. You get in a circle. Maybe you tap your belly. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, wasn't that nice? Okay, see you next time. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? You're not going to go into a Qing school and go into a demo session or watch them and think, yeah, here's a bunch of psychos. There must be a bunch of violence going on here. You know, you're going to say this guy on YouTube must be out of his mind because you don't want to see it. And that's natural. Nobody wants to see these things. No one wants to see what these types of people do when they go home. Or if I'm a smart man, or if you've at some point think I'm any kind of legitimate human being, which is not an assumption I dare make, but if you did, if you didn't, there's really no point in me trying to convince you of anything. But at some point, if only provisionally, you thought there was something I had to say that was worth saying about me, then you have to kind of include that in your risk assessment, right? The whole thing about psychopathy and cults is that you don't see it coming necessarily. Some people do. I knew people in Salzburg who came into Jingui for a demo and said, you know what, this is fucking creepy. I'm getting out of here. I had multiple male friends who did that. Just, this is creepy. I'm getting out of here. And the first time I met Felicity, it was creepy. You know, every time I met her, every time I'm around her, it was creepy. But I just, I accepted it. I thought I was part of something good. And it gave me a sense of purpose. Basically, lived in a nice cabin and it's nice. But there's other things that shock from sexual abuse show you over the years. I did have to deal more and more with violence. It wasn't like I was ignorant that violence was going on. It's just that I picked the route of least resistance to get out of it, at some point I was leaving the island anyway, and that's what was a poignant change in my circumstances. But there are events that precipitated that, including the fact that Felicity dislocated my shoulder with her negative, violent energy toward me, which was a pattern of gaslighting that was precipitated because I had begun to complain multiple times of sexual harassment, and I deduced correctly that she wasn't going to take it seriously or do anything about it. And it was strange because all it required was to talk to a woman about her similar age in the school, and to find out what she was concerned about. Without a doubt, the woman who sexually harassed me was obviously bothered by something to do with me. Absolutely, right, you would say. There were two gentlemen witnesses who agreed, yep, she looks like she has a problem with you. But Felicity didn't want to talk to this person and find out, just, even if you ran a school and there was any kind of, above, average violent conflict between two students, why wouldn't you talk to them and find out, hey, I mean, if we're all sensible people, you're living in the same cabin with me, I'm not insane. If you think this woman is remotely sane, why don't you say, hey, Felicity doesn't seem to have any shortage of facility in talking to people who are upset. In fact, she has above normal, I would say, ability, which is not always to her credit necessarily, of placating human beings, using a kind of use of the heart that Dr. Zhang uses. Other cult leaders she's been around use, Alma uses it, and Felicity's learned to use her heart in a certain way, right? To make people lose their interest, to calm the heart down, lose their interest in whatever they're upset about, right? So there's a forcefulness there that she could use to convince someone. So if someone looked at this video and talked to Felicity, she'd say, oh, this, you'd feel this warm, positive energy off her. That's basically what she'll put out, and you'll feel, oh, okay, and you'll just want to forget about it, because who wants to think about this when you've got the promise of Golden Shield Qigong and iFit 150 and $200-$300 a month, and you've basically got your exercise, you've got your life philosophy, you can think whatever you want, you can go out in nature, the deer will hop over fences and stare at you and say, hey, Dr. Zhang's our friend, and you will go on with your life. Dr. Zhang, who is a pathological liar and a psychopath, and shock allows you to start building knowledge. That's the reason why in Canada, for instance, they have a very liberal statute of limitations around sexual assault. And you might say any violent crime, because the victim, in this case, say me, cannot fully appreciate the impact it's had on their life. And you might also deduce quite fairly that the danger that now has been communicated to you, these are dangerous people. Felicity, her whatever it is, Life Wave, and Dr. Zhang and the Austin Healing Center, they're inviting vulnerable people into their midst, children into their midst. Someone who has raped a vulnerable person in her home, who has the trust of a friend, the trust of a student who's paying money to get Qigong, right? Who tells him that because another instructor basically raped a woman and put her in an insane asylum, the guru has said that, oh, you're not allowed to have sex with your students, but tells me it's okay to have sexual contact with me because she had sexual contact with me before I became a student, which she no doubt could have suspected I was going to do, and so probably had to initiate sex, as per Dr. Zhang, before I became a student. And so there's motivation there on top of the other perverted impulses to make sexual contact with me before I become a student, right? I was good friends with one of her longest running students at the time, Rudy Seegers, Rudy Hexter. Obviously I was going to join the school at some time, and that would mean that she would never be able to have sexual contact with me. And that wasn't good enough for her, because she felt an instant sexual attraction to me when she met me, as women her age and type usually do. Basically, I'm a very naive person, and women like that, disturb people like that, because they feel safer around me. They don't realize that the seeming safety they have around me, is because I have a great mind, and I don't say everything that's on my mind. I can collect information. By the time I'd met Felicity, I had written, dozens of books worth of classical romantic poetry most of my life, free verse. I'd written a novel when I was 18, which, she never knew about these things because she's not interested in me as a person. How many people who practice unconditional love and have all this mental development of all these levels and all these psychic abilities never find out that a man that you want to be a girlfriend to at some point and you have in your apartment and you're sexually assaulting has written a book? How would that never come up? I just find that very interesting, because at the same time, and my dad is a sexual predator as well, and they always think that because they know a certain amount about you, that they know everything they need to know. And it's a phrase that Felicity would use with me a couple times. Whenever I would try to talk about something a little more personal, she'd say, I already know enough about you. I don't need to know more. And what shock shows you throughout my time of knowing Felicity, and what you'll see with female sexual predators or psychopaths like her and Dr. Zhang, is how much they maintain control. Even up to the point, one of the last times I was actually in the school on Salt Spring before I left, there were two students there. And both of them asked me why I was going. Felicity had asked me to leave the school at this time, quite peremptory. Um, um, no indication as to why, nothing, just said, I'd like to leave, right? As she usually said such things without any qualification. And in fact, she had said this to me after I'd done a practice in the cabin one day and said, hey, that was a great practice. I really loved that. I had allowed all the other sexual harassment to go for the time being because she had clearly gotten very upset at the idea of dealing with, say, Rosalie. And I had said to her over the phone, if you don't deal with this, I will be forced to go above your head to Dr. Zhang to let him know that something dangerous has happened here. And I imagine, I didn't say this to her, that he would then tell you to go and talk to this person and find out what their problem was. And she had such a problem, I don't know if it's a fear, anxiety, or just this interrupted her pattern of control. Like she just, shut up. I don't want to deal with this. Why don't you shut up? Just like, the dog I basically told to shut up a little while ago. And that moment, I believe, began a change in her personality toward me and a change in her thinking toward me, and began to treat me like someone who was a bit sick or diseased. And this followed through in some of her instructors, like Brett Holland, who would sexually harass me in public, who already had some strange dislike for me, even though I virtually never talked to him. He would come visit the house sometimes, and he wouldn't even say hello to me. He literally would ignore me the entire time. So had some kind of an issue, and just a strange man. Again, into control, very controlled person. Felicity's friend Stephanie, who calls herself a naturopath, has food control issues. Food control issues. They both worship Amma. They have this absolutely groupie-like attitude towards this fat, ugly woman who talks about being the avatar of the ultimate mother energy in the universe. And they say mantras to her and all this type of thing. You don't have to respect people's stupid religions. One thing is, I don't want to know someone's stupid fucking religion for the most part. I mean, I have one, and aside from my YouTube videos, I don't talk about my stupid religion to anybody. And I certainly don't sell services to people like acupuncture, right? Acu just means under the skin. It's like prosecution means to put something under the skin, to treat you as though you're someone who doesn't have a will of their own, to control you. Acupuncture is basically torture, something put into your skin to torture you, to take control of your life. And the whole point of cults and stuff is to get you to give up control of your life, to make you feel like you're getting control of your life.